with anything, it's like begin with the end in mind. And this is where I historically probably still do make this mistake a lot, but in the past I made this mistake a lot in my teaching, and I see people make this mistake egregiously and they're not even aware of it. But it's like, I tell people begin with the end in mind. And the reason for that is because, like, if I just give you a process to say, okay, we're going to work on this move today, and I start going through the steps of the move, and now I get to step 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're like, what the hell were we doing again? Like, and people are just trying to memorize the steps, and they get untethered, they get lost, and it's like, well, where are you trying to get to? You know what I mean? Like, if you could take the first couple steps and you screw up the next 3, as long as you know where you're trying to get to, you're probably going to fumble around and get close, you know, and then you can figure the rest out. So, you know, that's what's fascinating to me when, you know, I don't know, I don't want to get on too many tangents, but it's like the idea of the ecological approach, which is like really a popular thing right now.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere that I turn, I'm seeing ecological approach. I'm like, bro, how else do people train? Like, I mean, like, unless you're, you know, very young in training, that's kind of how you train. You get together and you pose problems, you create games, you create like specified positional isolation, and you problem solve through that, and you give yourself certain parameters that you don't violate. And granted, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, because I think what people like Greg Souders has done, and people that have really put in a lot of work to the ecological system, I think they are on something brilliant, and I absolutely respect the hell out of them. But, you know, the things that I'm curious about, that I'm still researching on it a little bit, because I want to make sure that I don't, you know, misspeak, is like, first of all, you kind of have to have a blended approach. You can't really jump into strictly ecological from day one. I just don't think that's a real thing, because like you have to have somebody point out the details of a technique, especially when it comes to submissions, I think. Yeah. You know, positionally, you can figure a lot out by placing people in certain restrictive games. But I don't think that's going to quite work with actual breaking mechanics and actual like applications of submissions and stuff. But anyway, that's a whole nother kind of topic. But it's something that's been kind of interesting. And like I said, I try to keep my finger on the pulse of all the. I don't want to disrespect it by calling it a trend, but it is popular right now. So I am, you know, trying to look at that way.
Yeah. No, so I've been also like kind of people have been suggesting a lot of those podcasts with Greg and some of the other guys talking about it. And like, it's interesting, but it's funny because like it's the way that they speak about it.
And what does it in your mind makes it more that ecological is bigger and makes more sense?
Okay, so you could think of the ecological approach as being an umbrella. So anytime we're designing a learning practice, we're taking the individual, the task, and the environment into consideration when we design this practice, because we know that how that system interacts creates the emergent quality of behavior, right? It creates the behavior. So that's all that ecological approach is saying. That is, as that system interacts, behavior comes out. The constraints-led approach is a tool within that system. So what the constraints-led approach guys are saying is that we can control this system and we can guide the emergence of behavior by setting constraints either within the individual system, the environment, or control the tasks. So it's just a way that we manipulate the ecological system to try to guide the emergence of behavior. So it's like I said, it would be like if grappling is a sport we all do, it can be defined as wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, same thing. So in the ecological approach, there are other methods that coaches use to try to control how behavior emerges. So that's the separation there in my mind.
Sometimes I started listening to the podcast. I'm like, what you're talking about is making things simpler, but the way that you're talking about it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm listening to like a whole paragraph of like, what the fuck did you just say, man? Like, what are you talking about?